Afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this meeting, and I will officially call this meeting to order at 3:33 p.m. Please note we do have regrets from Tanya Haverkamp. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people of Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Thank you. Okay, are there any additions for today's agenda? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Andrew, second by Becca. Two questions. All those in favor? And that is carried. This time I'll remind everyone that if you do have any pecuniary interest to declare, please do so now or anytime throughout this meeting. Seeing none. Moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, the January 19 minutes were circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I would like a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Becca, second by Andrew. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. We're now at item number 6 on our agenda, North Perth Economic Development Update, and we have Kim Couch with us. Welcome, Kim. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Kellum, Chairman Kellum. I'm just going to, I think I tried to hit the highlights of the activities for the month, for the 2 months in my report. One thing I just, before we begin, I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of the release of the census, the population census numbers in February, and that the numbers for North Perth were significant as we had expected, but I think even in some ways even more significant than what we had thought, that North Perth had an 18.3% increase in population since the last census in 2016. And for Listowel, it was actually 26.7% increase. So the North Perth population is now 15,538 and Listowel is 9,539. Which I think is as we had expected, that there was a significant increase, but it's good to have those numbers. The next release will be happening on April 27th, and that will be the release for age, type of dwelling, and that's always interesting kind of to see how that breakdown is and trends, and helps us to focus on just to see how things like youth attraction or retention or workforce attraction, areas that we can focus upon, and impacts for the future. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. For the report, we have reopened the facade program for this year. We're already having applications and interest, and I'm confident it's going to be another busy year. We have advertised for additional economic development staff to help support that program, as well as other strategic initiatives. And we will be having interviews later next week and are hoping to have the candidate within the next month. So that will definitely be a benefit in progressing some of our initiatives as well. I think the focus I would like to make is upon our RED application that we did submit at the beginning of March. And so that is a direct response to the strategic workforce attraction requirement and priorities that have been identified by North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee, as well as others. And it's quite a multifaceted project. It would be hiring a consultant to develop an employment branding strategy for North Perth, developing materials that could be used for the municipality, as well as for all employers, rolling out training or clinics to employers that would like to participate and take advantage of that, understanding more about what employer branding is and how to take advantage of it, as well as using the information to then reach out to the schools and inform youth about our opportunities. So it's the earliest that project would be active, if approved, would be September. And I believe we estimated to have it run until the end of June in 2023. So that would be an exciting project for us to receive. We do continue to wait the results of some of our other applications. Sometimes when grants are approved or considered, we're not in a position to be able to announce them. So no news is good news. And once we have more detail, then we'll be able to share that with the committee. And I think those hit the highlights. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you for your report, Kim. Members of the committee, are there any comments or questions that you would like to ask Kim at this point? I am scrolling across and see none. At any time, you can also reach out to Kim if something does come up after the meeting. That's not a problem whatsoever. Once again, Kim, thank you very much for your report and for all you do. Okay, moving on to item 7 on our agenda, Perth County Economic Development update. Welcome, Justin. You have the floor.
Great, thank you. So through the chair, just a couple of highlights from the update. So our digital service squads, we actually no longer have a dedicated digital service squad member on our team. The funding for that program has ended. That being said, we are continuing to offer digital service squad styles programming to our business community. So there's a number of the initiatives that we were delivering, including 360-degree photos of businesses, Google My Business Assistants, basic assistance with helping businesses set up social media pages and that kind of thing that we're going to continue to offer through our existing staff, summer students. So we really, because there was such a tremendous need and still is for digital service support, we're going to continue to offer those services that we can within our existing staffing complement, and are hopeful that a digital service squad 4.0 grant may be opening in the near future and would be in a position to apply and get a full-time person on to do that again. So still very much an active program, and encourage businesses to reach out if they have digital needs, and we'll continue to support them in that. I Discover More Adventures program, we're accepting applications for the 2022 program at this time. That program is really a marquee program for tourism this year in terms of offering a whole wraparound support for tourism businesses, develop marketable experiences. So things like training, photography, videography, paid advertising, marketing, and more. So sure you've hopefully seen some of our experiences from last year, building on that success, developing more experiences to really build the experiential tourism offerings here in Perth County. So again, any business that has an experience already developed or is looking to add an experience for tourism purposes to their business, please do reach out to Ashley, our tourism officer, and see if that might be a good fit for this program. And really, it's a really, positive program in terms of the value is almost $10,000 in terms of the photography, the marketing support, the training. So it really is a good offer for business to take advantage of if they are a good fit. Our farm gate program continues to accept new applications. So there are deadline is, we've extended the deadline once again, so Farmgate businesses have another 2 days to March 25th, which is this Friday, to get their information completed so that they can be in the printed map for this year. Inclusion in the digital map is really, we can accept that at any time, but we do have to kind of put a hard cap on the printed version just so we can get that printed and distributed this time of this year's tourism season. Again, it's a free program, no cost to any Farmgate, and what you get with that is, again, inclusion in the digital map, the printed map, and a whole host of signing and demarcations for your business to help them promote your business as being part of the program and build that overall tourism asset for our county. Our PC Connect, we are offering employer toolkits. So what these are, just a host of resources for businesses to help their employees take advantage of the PC Connect program as that continues to grow and as restrictions ease. And we even, things that we can offer as part of that are posters, route maps, and even some free passes so that employers can give those to their staff to try the service and see if it's a good fit for getting them to work and back. So please reach out to our tourism coordinator, Maggie Martin, if you have an interest or know of a business that could benefit from some free passes and some more information about how their employees can access the service. And then there's a couple of other pieces in the report there about some ongoing funding opportunities, the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund, 2 new digital adoption programs that were announced recently, which are really good complements to our digital service squad and will help that continued support to get businesses online. And I might leave it at that. The rest of the information is in the report, but I don't want to take up too much time. So with that, I will welcome any questions.
Thank you for your report, Justin. Members of the committee, any comments or questions for Justin at this time? Across up top. I don't see anything. Do you see anything, Mary? No. Okay, once again, if anything comes up or you remember after, just reach out to Justin. I'm sure he'll reply back to you as soon as time permits. So again, Justin, thank you very much for your presentation and all that you do. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 8 on our agenda. Topic discussion, 8.1 affordable and attainable housing. Kim? You're on mute.
I was saying the other day we wouldn't get through a meeting even 2 years later without having to remind someone to get off mute. So I'll take the credit for it this time.
No worries.
So yes, so we are working our way through the information, through the topics we identified during the priority setting process completed last fall, and we are now to spend some time just discussing affordable housing, and thought we would start it off with a couple of questions just to stimulate discussion. We'll, do our best to ensure that we're answering these questions, but if there are other opportunities for us to get additional information, it's great. We're kind of starting early enough that I think we'll be able to be a good in-depth discussion. So we'll start it off with our first question. Sorry, I'm just getting over. So are any of you aware of businesses locally already supplying or subsidizing housing for their employees? I'm aware of a couple. I'll just throw out one to start with. I know when I was doing physician recruitment that was a key area that they did provide housing to medical students and residents, as well as locums. That was I think a really big turning point in that being offered. So that was where some of the funding was used for the recruitment program, was to be able to offer that housing. So I think that falls into that category. I think Warden Updegrove may actually. I'm not sure if they still do as well. Is that true, Becca, or?
We just actually purchased a property that we are going to be offering up to co-op students, potentially long-term perspectives, because we are finding that it's difficult to find people in town. Can't find rentals or affordable rentals for co-op students who are making a little more than minimum wage. So we thought it was best to have a fully furnished property for those individuals.
Is that recent, or have they started to be in the space yet? Or
That extremely recent. Like, I just found out about it within the month.
okay.
But before that, I don't think we had anything. I think we worked with, like, Ward Upper would work with people to find rentals.
Okay.
I don't think they ever subsidized anyone or offered locations for anyone.
Do you know how many people you're planning to accommodate in the house? I mean, I know it'd be just to go whether you can have 2 or.
I thought maybe 4. Like, if it was more going to be like, if it was just co-op students, it was maybe more like, I don't know, university housing kind of in a way.
Yeah. And I know that was kind of with, we had 2 apartments in where we rented for the family health team, and technically they could be shared. Students were a little bit more willing to do that, and as they got into being residents, and because their schedules are really, a lot of overnight shifts and working like that kind of stuff, it didn't always work out. But initially, being shared accommodations was good and actually even welcome, because then they would have somebody that they could do things with. So I'm sure that might be the case for your co-op students as well. Okay, that's great. Any other businesses that anyone's aware of that are currently subsidizing or providing housing?
I can talk, Kim. I'm not aware of any specifics, but certainly something that's been on our mind for several years. And I guess from our own thoughts, had hoped that we could avoid this sort of thing in the future. But more and more as time goes by, assuming that probably we are not going to be able to avoid it. We have lots of farm customers who have put up housing for staff, most of it being foreign staff that are coming in for seasonal work, some permanent. It's not all seasonal, but lots of farm homes being filled with part-time staff or seasonal staff, and but ourselves and other manufacturing operations, I haven't heard of any scenarios where housing was being purchased for staffing purposes.
I was just curious. Sometimes there are those innovations that are out there that we just don't always hear about. So, anyone else?
Yes, I do know of a business just recently within the last 3 weeks in the northeast end of Listowel has purchased property right beside them that has a home, and it's for their own employees also, and it will keep probably 2 or 3 families there as well. So yes, they did purchase the land right beside them with a house and moving forward with it. So good news, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks. I know a little bit about the healthcare sector. It appears that some of these nursing agencies that are bringing nurses and other healthcare professionals to rural communities are trying to make deals, especially, and not necessarily that they're buying housing, but they're trying to scoop up contracts or make commitments for rooms in homes where there's extra space, sort of boarding type arrangements for these temporary kind of workers. It's not necessarily a full solution, obviously, for what is a bigger problem, but it is interesting that that seems to be part of their efforts at this point, is to scoop up that kind of availability if they can get it. I just wanted to offer another comment too, and it's just sort of personal experience. In my youngest married days, I lived in a little village just outside of Sudbury called Lively, and frankly, it was anything but. You had to be really careful in the morning when you backed out of your driveway not to run into people who were talking in the middle of the streets. But what was so interesting about Lively is that it was built, purpose-built by Inco in 1948 to 1952. Essentially, they had 7 models of homes, and they slapped them all up in that 4-year period and built a whole new village to support their mining endeavor in that area. And that wasn't the only town they built. Of course, they were significantly involved in Coppercliff and also in a small village no longer there called Creighton. And it just sort of strikes me in the question that we're sort of back to the future. You know, we've seen solutions like this that corporate has done in the past for the sake of securing themselves a workforce, and here we are in 2020 talking about that, right, in the 2020s. So just sort of an interesting observation about how solutions sometimes are found in the past.
Thank you, Todd.
Anyone else know? Or, I mean, I think as Andrew mentioned, agriculture, you know, we've heard examples of people who have had housing on their property and that they've had it for temporary foreign workers. And I've heard a couple of instances of that. And that traditionally, historically, I think had been a little bit more common. But I just wasn't sure if other employers had been kind of considered or had been or had started using that. So anyone else aware, or we can just
Kim, it's
yes.
Leanne here. I can Terpstra Farms offers housing for their workers, and they continue to look for housing though that they can use for that purpose, and that's been common for them the last number of years to offer that support, and it's becoming more and more of a commonality for companies. I know my own son was housed by a company in Windsor called ADM when he worked there for a year as a co-op student, and they were not using that housing just for co-op students. They were using it for new hires as well who needed housing. And it was one of the perks for him because they paid for that housing. He didn't have to pay additional rent for it. It was part of his income. So it was one of the reasons why he ended up relocating there for a while to get that first co-op position. So it's like Todd said, it's very much back to the future, and we can see some more innovative things happening perhaps in the future around you know, locating workers. I guess one of the main concerns at this moment though is that there is a lack of inventory that's for sale. And even though there are properties for sale, they are going for astronomical prices over asking, which young people can't afford, or new people coming into town can't afford. And there are some sad stories out there. The Salvation Army currently had hired a worker, a coordinator for the Hope Links organization, and that person ended up leaving the position because they couldn't find housing. And that was in the last 6 weeks. So they're back to the drawing board in terms of hiring. And that's, you know, it's definitely at a critical point here for sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Leanne. Okay. I'm seeing if anyone else has comments on that at all. Okay. Yeah, something we'll, I think, you know, as we look for potential solutions, like there's a variety of different solutions that that we can consider, that employers can consider in addressing housing issues in the short term. Some of those may be solutions to consider. I mean, definitely a lot of housing isn't available, and Terpstras were one that I'm aware of. that I know have been providing housing for quite some time. But it's interesting hearing about some of those other options. And I think it's true. It is a competitive advantage to employers as they're bringing in co-op students or even new hires to be able to offer housing. Employers may need to start looking at those types of options as attraction options for them. So, okay. So the second point is, what do you think is needed for businesses to partner in funding housing for employees? So this is more of a larger scale. I think the first question was more in the businesses kind of managing it on their own, more of a smaller scale. I think traditionally we've maybe thought of the larger scale, a bigger initiative where they have to build something themselves. What do you think is needed for potential businesses to partner in funding housing for employees? Or I mean, even we can talk about the smaller scale options as well. But any feedback on that or comments?
Kim, I think, and it sort of overlaps with the first question too. I think that frankly we're in a place where for us to sort of release more housing, we need to sort of be much more cautious about talking about new builds, because new builds are 3 to 5 year initiatives, right? Generally speaking. And so what we need to do is try to release inventory in the current market. And Councillor Rothwell has been quite convincing to me on making that plea that our fastest path to an influx of affordable housing is to release from current stock, right? And some of that's about policy change, and some of that's going to be about financials, but some of this is about marketing. Some of this is about telling the story that we need housing opportunities to be released, and trying to create some kind of asset database. People who are saying, yes, I have an extra bedroom in my home, could make a difference in trying to support matching and stuff like that. And I know that that's not the perfect housing solution, right? The sort of boarding and rental solutions are not fully going to address the kind of problems that we have in North Perth. But I think we got to tell the story pretty well in the near future. That because if we don't, we're talking about 3 to 5 year processes here, and that's too long. That's just not going to be sustainable for our business sector, for our economy, if we're waiting 3 to 5 years for new stock. And as we've heard already, and I think it was Leanne who pointed out, that new stock is extraordinarily expensive too. Like that's part of the challenge here. So, I think when you talk about that sort of partnering and so forth with businesses, I think part of what the municipality can do is sort of tell the story, market the story, and perhaps create that database of possible places where we can refer people to. I know that's going to be a high turnover kind of problem, and perhaps human resources intensive, but it's something we should think about at least, right?
Any other comments out there?
Hi, Leanne.
Todd makes a good point around telling that story. And there could very well be lots of stock out there with, one person living in a large home that does, that person does have space that could potentially be, something that would help the housing market now for the short term. Is there something that we can do as a municipality that can help tell that story? And kind of do a campaign around that. Is that something that we could consider doing from an economic development perspective? Thanks.
I think that's a good comment, Leanne. And we can. I think it's important that even the businesses, they're more familiar with their employees, maybe and how to reach out to them. Maybe there could be some incentive program through the businesses to their employees, say, listen, you have a room you can share, you know, we need it. They may know better how to approach than us. I'm not saying we can't do it, but I think the businesses know their employees and say, you know, it doesn't hurt to ask. It's either yes or a no. Like, people say no because they think it's their own home, but who knows? They know their employees better than us, but good comments. Kim, your comment on that?
I'm sorry, did you? I missed that last part there.
Do you have anything to add to that, whether it's an employer reaching out to their internal staffing?
I think that might be effective.
Throwing ideas out, yes.
Versus the municipality. I mean, sometimes the municipality leading those things isn't always an impactful way. I mean, there may be sources though for space that is not from within businesses, and maybe people feel more comfortable having arrangements with people who are not from their own employer. I can see that as well. I think it is a pretty, it could be a labor intensive process for sure. But it might be a solution.
Well, as Leanne and Todd said, you know, with regard to the municipality, and Alan did speak also, yeah, like we're 3 to 5 years out. We can do it. It's just there's nothing for the, and I don't want to call it an immediate fix, but for right now, we can, you know, well, maybe change bylaws or whatever, but for the immediate, I'm just, I don't know what's out there.
And I think, you know, to your point, Doug, well made. And it strikes me that maybe the first intervention, the perhaps the lowest hanging fruit, is just some kind of simple, almost standardized marketing communication about if you have an extra room, you know, like tell somebody, like consider making it available, and maybe that material is made available to our employers. Right? Maybe those who are in the market would be given supporting materials to help them communicate that message in a way that doesn't require each of them to invent or reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So,
and just
kind of look at it as Andrew can relate as building hockey players. We used to do that all the time. You know, maybe there is a you know someone saying, okay, you know, we'll take you on for 6 months, whatever, get you on your feet and move on. So just stepping into the box. Sorry, Chris.
I was just going to say, so we're actually working on a report that follows very similar to the sort of things that the committee is talking about that we hope to bring to the next council meeting. I think that one of the things too, we're also, one of the very first steps too is what does additional residential units look like? Because that's what they're commonly referred to. What are the regulations around them? Because that's the thing too. We're also seeing you just can't stuff somebody in the basement, and there's lots of human health and building requirements that we have to make sure that are followed too. So it's going to be about education to those people who may have room, and then secondly, how do we connect those people who have room with the people who need it? I think that's really the two parts of that immediate question.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Go ahead, Andrew.
I guess from my perspective, you know, we as a business would always prefer to avoid owning homes to potentially be filled with either part-time or temporary staff or co-op students or things like that. It's not something that fits into our business plan. And I think that I can speak for most businesses that's not an essential part of our expectations on how we operate. And maybe we need to be told, something slap us in the face that says, you need to be thinking about this. And maybe the municipality could play a role in educating employers about that reality. We may not be aware of what we're staring at, even though it's maybe months away from really being a bigger issue. And I don't know whether something the municipality could do to play a role in that. But I'm sure I speak for 95% of businesses. It just doesn't fit into our budgets. It's just not there to think about owning these kind of real estate facilities to potentially fill with a part-time employee or a new employee situation. But we maybe need to be more eyes wide open to that reality of what might be coming over the next few years.
Thanks, Andrew.
And to Andrew's point, I think, thank you for the candor there. I agree. I don't think most businesses have had to think about this, unlike Inco back in the 1940s, right? So it's an interesting new landscape. I think the report that Chris Snell mentioned is going to talk about a somewhat broader initiative to consult as well, Andrew, and that will be an important next step too. We've, you know, I suppose one of the things I'll own being frustrated about is that we've consulted a lot, and yet we haven't really put shovels in any ground, right? And so we need to move past that, but there is still an opportunity to try to co-create, and I think that's kind of what the next step from the municipal angle is to try to facilitate discussions that co-create solutions. So keeping my fingers crossed.
Just one follow-up comment, Todd. Thanks for that. I love the idea of something be distributed, saying with information about available rooms. That might just be enough for employers to say, as if something were circulated on a periodic basis, to say, you know what, I do have a short-term need, and instead of making 37 calls around to community members, there might be something coming out on a semi-regular basis to say, here's what's available. That would be fabulous, I think.
I agree with Andrew's comment on that. I know that Warren Upper Grove, like when before they purchased this, they'd always reach out to all of the employees and ask, like, does anyone know of a room, or does anyone have room that they could house these people temporarily? Like, and there's never anyone to do it through Warren Upper Grove. So that's 75 people that they've reached out to, and your options kind of get limited. And I know everyone has connections, but sometimes those connections are exhausted, and it would be nice to have a list, as Andrew said, to kind of reach out to those individuals for temporary housing or options like that.
Thanks. Leanne, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I really believe that we should be looking at what we can do to help, and whether it means doing some media campaign to support this cause, and to even direct, you know, can we collect from companies what their needs are, and then if we do get information from the community about openings and availability in our own community, we could just direct to companies that may that information ourselves. So I think this is really, and I'm really glad that CO Snell talked about a report coming out. I'm really hoping to see what, I'm excited to see what that is all about. But I think that this kind of brainstorming and thoughts about some next steps are really worthy of us thinking about from an economic development perspective. Because I think it's critical that, we work together to support our local businesses in this exact issue. Because I think if we don't, it could be very, very detrimental. So I think if we can talk more about this, perhaps put it on another agenda, I think it'd be really worthy of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Or Justin, you would like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I should have mentioned the county also has a red application for a workforce attraction and retention employer toolkit. And a portion of that is really about that best practice research in terms of obviously attracting and retaining workers. Housing is a critical component of that. So part of the, if successful, this project will kind of investigate some of those best practices in terms of what employer-led practices for housing the workforce. And second part of that is an implementation toolkit. So just an example I know, which may or may not be part of the study if it goes ahead, but an employer offers a retention bonus. So employees who stay for a certain period of time can accumulate effectively a down payment into a property. So that's one way. Obviously, that's not going to help with immediate supply, but just some of those innovative there's lots of these things going on out there, and the implementation toolkit would be a way to really give them employers, so they're not starting from scratch in terms of what does an agreement look like for this kind of a project, or what does this entail, what are the implications of this. The implementation toolkit will be kind of providing those step-by-step approach for employers to, if that's something they're interested in pursuing, here's some steps that you can follow to achieve that outcome. So again, it's part of a RED application that we're hoping will be successful, a part of that workforce retention and expansion, workforce retention and attraction piece. But yeah, there's lots of innovative ideas that are out there that may or may not be applicable here in North Perth and Perth County more generally.
Thanks, Justin. Nothing else? Moving on, Kim?
I think that, we kind of, I believe, moved into that last bullet, but maybe there are other ideas. Are there any quick wins or best practices regarding affordable housing that might work in North Perth? So I know of some university examples where there's like matchmaking. I don't know that it's called exactly that, but it's like making a senior and a youth connection, providing reduced income or reduced rent for people who will do some shoveling or do grocery shopping, or you commit 2.5 hours to caring or, helping with different chores at the house and then providing rent. So, I've heard of different models, and it sounds very much like what I think the county's plan, or funding application is about, but there might be some others. Whether we want to launch that, in advance of that and providing a toolkit, or how we could approach that. But are there any other ideas out there, or current ideas of best practices that we could? I think we talked about this a little bit already, but any more background information that you might be aware of? Programs? I know one thing, and I haven't looked into it recently. They called it the Golden Girls Act a few years ago, where there was, which I thought was a really good idea, because I know that there are a lot of people, the province is encouraging and making ways for people to stay in their homes versus going to long-term care. But that also holds capacity for people who might want to purchase homes when they're living on their own in homes. So it was giving planning opportunities or planning allowances so that a number of seniors could live together in a home, and that would open up a variety of a lot more space in other places. So, I haven't seen or heard recently of communities that have implemented it, but that's, I'm sure, will be one option that will come out of the best practices project. But any other ideas that you may, that just trying to brainstorm here, different possible options?
Go ahead, Todd.
Thanks, Kim. You sort of triggered something there. Certainly at a session at AMO going back a couple of years ago, there was a project being undertaken. I want to say it was Aurelia, it could have been Barrie. It was somewhere in sort of central Ontario that involved seniors cohabiting, co-housing, and in small sort of environments. Now, these were still essentially retirement residences, but small ones, 8 to 10 bedrooms. This was the original model. And I noticed recently a similar story about that kind of housing for seniors, but more long-term care oriented, but moving away from the big 96 and increments of 32 model, which has pervaded long-term care for the last several years, and back to sort of the neighborhood nursing home, for lack of a better term. What's interesting is that trickle-down effect, right? The trickle-down effect is that if we can get more seniors co-housing, then we may release more inventory in other parts of the community that can help to solve some of the targeted problems. If you go back to the city of Stratford's plan for housing and homelessness for the next 5-year window, what was particularly interesting is that they identified that the highest priority housing form was 1-bedroom apartments or 1-bedroom homes, and that's not what's being built. In general terms, in Perth County, any new stock is not 1-bedroom, but that's where the most urgent need appears to be. And so it may be that more experiments with seniors co-housing will release, but the problem is models, right? Like, yes, there might be a model in Aurelia or Barrie or wherever it is that I can't remember, but it's Pleasant Country, certainly. We need models and we need capital for that. And that's sort of working with almost a trickle-down assumption, right? That if we sort of solve some of that problem, then we'll release in the market and that will help solve other problems. And that's pretty unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get when you do that. So certainly, the best practices project that Justin has spoken of, I look forward to. I hope there's a significant housing contribution there, Justin. I know that it focuses a lot on labor, and of course housing is at the heart of and it may be the most significant contributor to the labor issue in Perth County at this point. But I'm hoping that you get that grant first of all, and that it yields fruit, and that our project that we also land and it sort of builds on what you're doing. I think that's the hope.
Thanks, Todd. Good comments. Go ahead, Chris.
I would agree too that we've really focused on short-term solutions today, and I think that's ultimately necessary. But I also, one of the articles I read this week, that we need 4 million units in Canada and 1 million in Ontario alone. So there needs to be almost two components of this, because we need to focus on the short term, but we also need to look at long term in that 3 to 5 year window too. And we need to really probably press on both our development community, but also upper levels of government, and how we can create units faster, but yet more responsibly, considering urban sprawl and all those sort of important topics in our community. Because a million units is not going to be solved through the boarding solution, but it's going to be a combination of many things. So I think just we can't lose sight of that other sort of longer term solution as well.
Absolutely. Well said, Chris. And looking at this committee here, and I'm glad that we are addressing it in all aspects of it, whether it's short term or long term. But don't kid ourselves. This isn't going away. This is for generations beyond us. And as fast as we're building them now, just right here in North Perth, they're going. I take a look, and again, what is affordable and attainable to us is different to other people. But if you take a look around us, as soon as they go in the market, they're gone. Someone's getting them. But we are stepping up here and trying to come up with some solutions. It's not that we're sitting back. So glad we did have this very interesting conversation today. Tim, is there anything else you'd like to comment on? Mute.
If anyone has any further thoughts that they would like to share or suggestions, just to add to the conversation, I think it's good to come into these discussion meetings if you have other thoughts. We've kind of expanded off of this so that we're more short-term focused into talking about more longer term. But are there any other sides that we haven't talked about that we should be considering? And I think if not, I think that is good, really good information for us to use as we're
You're still on mute.
I think if you, Leanne has put a comment in chat that we should need to continue the discussion to look at some next steps at future meetings.
I agree as well. Yes. Okay, if there is anything else, please speak at this time. Comments, questions, if not. Thank you very much. Okay, Kim, I think we have some direction and some good feedback moving forward. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there is nothing else to discuss at this time, I believe the next meeting is May 18th, Mariama, is that correct? May 18th at 3:30, you'll send them the agenda prior to that. And if there's nothing else at this time, I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting at 4:24 p.m. Moved by, don't see everyone up here. Moved by Leanne, second by Becca. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thanks everyone for coming out today, and have a great evening and week.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.